UK, it's 3:23. What else is out?
I'm just going to leap ahead in our running order to go to Alone in Berlin, because it was mentioned earlier on in the...
When we were talking about Hampstead. Someone who thought it might be your movie of the week.
Adapted from a book by Hans Flader and, of course, based on true story. Essentially, what happens at the beginning of it is that we start with a young man, a German soldier, being shot on the French front. We then move to Germany, where his parents learn of the loss of their son. His parents, played by Emma Thompson and Brendan Gleeson. He works in a factory where he has a kind of, fairly high up position in the factory. She is an upstanding citizen and member of the Nazis' Women's League, but they have no faith in the Führer or the war. They blame the Führer for the death of their son. Upstairs in the block where they live is a Jewish lady who is being hounded out of her apartment, basically hiding in her apartment. And you learn very early on that they are sort of very protective towards her. And the mother figure, played by Emma Thompson, thinks that her husband is not responding properly when they learn the tragic news. But it turns out actually what he's doing is he's internalized his grief. And what he wants to do is he starts writing cards. It's like this small but really significant rebellion. He starts writing postcards that say, "Mother, the Führer murdered my son. He will murder yours too. Pass it on. Stop the war machine. Down with the Hitler machine. Believe in yourself, not Hitler's gang." And they start on this path, which is to leave these cards around, these acts of rebellion, what they call the free press, to start, to write the truth. Meanwhile, Daniel Brühl is charged with investigating what he comes to call the Hobgoblin case. He says very early on, look, we've had all these cards have been handed in. What percentage of the cards do you think have been handed in? 95%? Because obviously, nobody will pick up one of these cards. And, so I think most people will be handing them over. Meanwhile, they're having a discussion about what happens to the cards. I mean, they're risking their lives by putting these cards out. What happens when they get picked up? Here's a clip.
What do you think happens to our cards?
Why do you want to know?
I want to know how people react.
Some people will be afraid, probably. Afraid that someone may have watched them pick up the card. Some will maybe put them back. Some people will turn them into policemen, block wardens. But our cards will also be read by them.
It's like with a machine. A little sand in the gears will not stop the machine. But if a person throws a little more sand and then more, the motor begins to stutter. The assembly line stops. In my mind, I see lots of people throwing sand in the gears.
You are romantic, Otto Quangel.
I'm a mechanic.
Yeah, that too.
There are very few people who do repressed and sort of sublimated angst as well as Emma Thompson. We've spoken before about her performance in Remains of the Day, and also, of course, that the scene in Love Actually, in which she goes into the room and stops herself from crying. And it's a very particular skill. There's one thing to do, big gestures on screen. It's something else to do something which is internalized. And here, with Brendan Gleeson, it's a real kind of masterclass in how to underplay those kind of emotions and make them all the more powerful as a result of it. The story, because it's about, what is essentially this small act of resistance, the idea of writing cards and leaving them on somebody's door, leaving them on a staircase. It's the sort of comparatively low key nature of it that makes it more powerful. Now, I have to confess that at the beginning, I went in sort of slightly worried, because it's the thing about, speaking English in German accents, although of course actually because you've got Daniel Brühl, it kind of levels everything out in the middle. And I didn't know much about the film at all. I didn't I didn't go in with huge expectations, and except for the fact that it's Emma Thompson and Brendan Gleeson, and that they're very good. And I was surprised by how much it managed to get under my skin, how much it managed to tell the story in a way which was impressively low-key. And the more low-key it was, the greater power it had. And I think an awful lot of it does come down to the fact that when you see two performers, telling this story, which is a story which is, uplifting and brave, and yet you see the level on which they're delivering it. It made it all the more powerful, and I was very impressed by it, particularly on a performance level, and particularly since we'd had Brendan Gleeson in the show recently, and he mentioned it literally only in passing, and I was very impressed, particularly by their performances and the way in which they convinced you that they were two people who internalized their grief and had found this expression of it that I did believe in completely. For all the artifice of the film, for all the way in which it constructed its own version of reality, I believed in it. And that's what you want a film to do, to make you believe in the characters.